You know, when you have a goal and you start planning to achieve that goal? Welcome to the Inspired Builders Podcast, your source for game-changing conversations with Australia and New Zealand's leading builders and industry experts. Each week, we deliver real stories and proven strategies from those who've been in your shoes. Ready to build something remarkable? Let's dive in. You know, when you have a goal and you start planning to achieve that goal?
Yeah. Long-term goal, short-term goal? Or?
Well, whatever, really. You, I guess, get to talk to a lot of our builders and like clients, non-clients, at events, all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, it's only natural to have goals.
Yeah, I think we are very much in an environment where the people who are around us or we surround ourselves with and the clients we help and the builders that engage in our content and engage with us are all very driven to varying degrees, but pretty driven. Therefore, you are driven because you have a goal and you're working towards it.
Yeah. So that's like the normal way of thinking about something, right? Like you set up a goal and then you're working towards it. You make a plan.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty natural in like building as well. Like you're about to help a client and then their goal is to have a house. And at that point in time, there is no house. So they engage you. And then there's like this process of like working towards the house.
Yeah. The natural thought is, what do I have to do to get the house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is great. But you and I both have these books, those red books called, what are they called again?
Mental Models.
Yeah.
I forget who the author is, but he attributes, if you look at the footnote, he attributes a lot of the thinking to Charlie Munger.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Charlie Munger and also other
thinkers, but Charlie Munger, I think, has contributed a good percentage of the content of those books.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Charlie Munger is the late business partner to Warren Buffett, to Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah. And they've achieved awesome stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the reason why we're bringing this up is because I was reading this particular mental model called Inversion, and yeah, it really caught my eye. I've had these books for probably 2-3 years now, maybe longer, and I always revert back to this mental model called Inversion.
Yeah, you often bring it up and it is a great mental model, but often when the team's going after a goal, you're very quick to bring it in. So I'm keen to unpack it more with you.
Yeah. I think probably the best way to like, best analogy or whatever I can use is like, I've got this goal of like riding 500K in one day.
Maybe let's dig into that a little bit because that's a good goal and I want people to grasp it a little bit more. For those who don't know, Corne loves his cycling. So what is the goal and when are you planning on doing it?
Okay. So the longest ride I've ever done is like, I think 220 maybe.
Okay. In
one day. And it was quite fast. So it wasn't like I haven't really like gone in and done like a big, long all-day ride.
Okay.
Now, every year there's this thing called Rapha 500 and it's basically you get 8 days and you've got to complete 500 kilometers and then you are, I don't know, you don't really win anything. I think you get a discount with Rapha, which is like a cycling brand. And every year like I do it, but not because I try, it's just because it's holidays and you're riding and all that. So it kind of happens naturally. But then last year I had this goal of like doing this 500K in the one day, like last Rapha 500 on the first day, not only just in one day, but like on the first day of Rapha 500. And I didn't do it.
Didn't work out. Why did it not work out?
Well, do you remember the storms?
Not really. I feel like up here
Christmas Day was
storms
like
every Christmas.
Was it Christmas Day? Like all these trees got ripped out everywhere on the Gold Coast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like, it was like the most mental storms we've had on the Gold Coast for as long as I've been here.
Because we went to go, I think you and I and Rich and our kids went and grabbed burgers and we were just driving around. There's just the biggest trees lying on the road.
Yeah.
It was
trees got ripped
apocalyptic.
Out.
It was,
It was crazy. So I didn't do it. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to do it on like the third day in one day. I'll just wait till next year. Right. So that's the goal now. But I think a lot of people think, okay, my goal is 500K. What do I need to do to be able to do that.
500 kilometers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what do I need to do that? I need to train. I need to probably eat well and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Sleep.
Yeah. So like you plan it. You plan your route, all that.
Yeah.
Then,
sorry, keep going.
No, yeah, go there.
No, I was going to say, how do you, to maybe help people understand inversion,
Yeah.
can you relate inversion to this in your prep?
Well, the
the
normal
goal?
way of planning about is like, again, like just you're thinking forward, like planning it out. Whereas inversion, you ask the question, for me not to achieve 500K, what needs to be true?
Yeah.
Okay, so what are all the things that will possibly stop me from achieving 500 kilometers?
Right, okay.
Could be a massive storm.
Yeah.
All right. So it's going to be things that are both in your control and not in your control. So things like a storm is not in your control. Other things could be like physical kind of barriers for me. You know, it could be like my fitness levels, you know, inadequate. What's the word?
Inadequate.
Inadequate. Oh my goodness. Nutrition.
Yeah.
Or like lack of like sleep and so on, you know. Equipment issues. So bike that like breaks. External factors again, like weather, roads could be broken. Because last time, like, all these roads got
Eroded,
broken.
so you
and
have
stuff.
to go change routes.
Yeah. And then like mental challenges as well. Like I might just get to that stage and kind of like freak out. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is stupid.
Why am I doing this?
Yeah,
Why
exactly.
do they? Yeah.
And then like maybe logistical problems, like not having, you know, support, or like so many things could go wrong.
Yeah.
And that will all stop me from achieving the 500K for that one day, because I've got to work it out pretty good. Like I'm going to be riding like the whole day.
Okay. So you, with the inversion, you've got the goal, but rather than going, all right, I need a bike, I need fluids, I need all this stuff to achieve the goal, application of inversion on this goal is what would all the things be that would potentially stop me from achieving the goal? And then you work at minimizing or mitigating as many of those obstacles as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I think like one thing I would love to like get across in this podcast, like at the end of the podcast, we'll kind of give you the opportunity to just like sit down and do this for yourself, for your own business, right? As a building business. And we're going to give you some like examples and ideas and stuff that we see around that could probably get you like to think about it. But I think for you, like obviously when it comes to goals and desires that builders have, what are some of the desires that you see that builders have, like personally and also in business?
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you, is it like in relation to personal business or in relation to what we help them with? But if it's all of that, yeah, it would be they want to run a successful business, a profitable business. They want good clients, good projects consistently with as little friction as possible. And they want the business ultimately to run with less of their input, as little as possible, which then gives them the time and freedom to do more, maybe set new goals, start new businesses, or a lot of them it's for time with family.
Yeah, that's good.
Or other projects that, other philanthropic projects, give back to their community or something like that.
Yeah, that's real cool. Okay, so I think it's probably a good idea for this podcast just to like have one example, and then we could probably list out a few, like using the inversion kind of like exercise is to like work it out that way. So, I mean, like one, I guess, desire for a lot of our clients and builders that we talk to is kind of like getting ideal clients. They want to work with clients that value them, that trust them, clients that don't run the process. They're happy to like fall into the process of the builder and so on. So yeah, most of the time you would ask the question, how do I get more quality clients? That is the question you would ask. And then you would, I guess, start mapping out what that looks like.
Yeah.
Like what are some like things that you would bullet point? Like if you just gave 3 quick things.
Like more ideal client. Firstly, I would define what an ideal client looks like. Then I would say, okay, how do I get their attention?
Yep.
And then how do I convince them?
Yeah. And that's perfectly valid. Like that, you should definitely ask yourself those questions. So what I like about inversion is it's not there to like replace the method that you just used there. Like, how do I get that? And then list it out. It doesn't replace it at all. It's using both. And that's what I really love about it. And we're not wired to think about inversion.
Yeah, I was going to say, because this is something I sometimes struggle with, is what is the inverted question?
Yeah.
Like, you're good at that because you've practiced it.
Well, I still find it hard, and I still catch myself. I'm like trying to solve problems or whatever, and I just go forward.
Yeah.
Instead of, don't get this mixed up with reverse engineering something.
Yeah, that was my question I asked you actually off camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not reverse engineering. Reverse engineering is almost the same as thinking forward in a way. You're just thinking backwards in terms of the process to get there.
Yeah.
Inversion is to like, what is going to stop me if there's anything that's going to stop me? Yeah. So, I mean, I guess a good way of saying it is, so let's say instead of asking, how do I get more ideal clients? Inversion makes us ask, what would make it impossible for ideal clients to hire me as a builder? So what will stop them? And this, like, this simple flip, like, really reveals blind spots that might come up that you can actually take on control of and solve, which then brings you closer to that goal.
The inversion, I find, when it's done well, it can help overcome the common problem of, like, anyone who's tried to go after a goal and then you go, oh, let's do this. We're going to do this. All right, let's go. And then you get that negative Nancy or the devil's advocate that comes in and goes, okay, have you thought about this? And you go, oh, no. And then you don't have an answer for that. Inversion helps with that. Inversion helps you plan through that.
Yeah.
Start there.
Exactly. So kind of like, let's run with a few examples of like this thing. Let's say the goal is like get ideal clients. Well, I will go into that in one sec. But like, again, for my 500K ride, if I use inversion, I would go, okay, great. One thing that'll stop me is me being unfit. How do I make sure that is not the thing that stops me with a 500K? Well, I've got to train. All right. Now I can make a plan on training and all that kind of stuff. Another thing could be, all right, weather will stop me. Now my goal is to do the 500K on the first day. There's a very big chance that weather will play a part where I won't achieve that goal. So now I'm going to be like, okay, how do I solve that? Like, if that's the problem, how do I solve that? Well, is it okay for me to move it to the second day or the third day or whatever? Like, is it just the one day that we're doing it? Or if I'm like, no, I need to do it on the first day, well, is there a way for me to do it like indoor? Right? Am I going to be happy with that? If I still accomplish that indoor, like, am I still going to be happy with myself and all that kind of stuff? Other thing could be like injuries could prevent, like cycling is notorious for this, like overuse, injuries, and you might not know about it like until like 200-300K in, where your knee starts hurting or whatever. So then you're like, okay, well, injury might be able to, even just a little niggle might stop me.
That's something that I know you pointed out to me. I've only been doing a little bit of cycling for like 2 months, but you often used to explain to me just that concept of it could be the smallest little thing that 1 rep, 2 rep, 3 rep, you have all rotations, you wouldn't even notice it. 100,000, you wouldn't notice it. But when you are riding 100 kilometers, 300 kilometers, that tiny little thing, you think of how many times you're going around on those pedals, it can considerably exacerbate whatever the little problem is. That's 100%. Probably another mental model for another day. But
no, but you're right? So in this case, it would be, okay, well, I need to make sure that I always stretch or maybe learn more about like conditioning, especially like my glutes. Like I'm having problems with my right glute this whole year, for example. So like going to physio enough, doing my exercises to make sure that that's not a problem, and also do a bike fit, for example. Because if you're like 3 mil out here or there, again, that repetition makes a huge difference. And I mean, how good is this for an analogy for business, right? Day in, day out, you're going through this repetition. So if you don't have something right, it's
you won't see the problem or the ramifications of that incorrect or suboptimal way of doing something today, tomorrow, next week, next month. But a year from now, you're going to be thinking, why am I not hitting my goals?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, if it comes to the pre-construction phase, right, the sales process.
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, you do this real weird thing of like, I don't know, I can't think of an example on top of my head now. But let's say you ask a question that really puts people off because you just haven't considered it or whatever. And you just do it every single time with every single prospect. And then you wonder, why am I like...
Client ghosts you. Or,
yeah. So that's what I like about this as well, is because, again, it's there to identify blind spots and for you to like start optimizing things, right? Yeah. So bringing it back to builders, I know we're talking about cycling and stuff, but bringing it back to builders, let's say their desire is to get more ideal clients. Instead of asking the question, how do I get more ideal clients? Which is a very important question to ask yourself. But instead of asking that, inversion makes us ask, what would make it impossible for ideal clients to hire me?
Yeah. So we've put together a list.
Created a list.
We have created a list to help identify what some of those things may be, to sort of ask yourself. Just some context, the list is in the format of, if this was the case, then you're making it really hard for yourself. So if we introduce these points or the list with the sentence, it would be impossible or very, very hard for someone to choose you as their builder if the ideal client doesn't even know that you exist. So the first few here we've got...
I think you've just skipped a few, mate.
Okay. You got a different list there?
Yeah, well, I think we've got the same list. I think you just missed a few, but...
Oh, yeah, okay. Fundamentals, please, yeah.
Fundamentals.
That's
before
important.
we get to the list almost is, again, if your desire is to get ideal clients, something that'll stop you from getting ideal clients is if you're not clear on who that ideal client is.
Yeah, that would be pretty impossible then. If you don't even know who the ideal client is, you'll never get them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it only makes sense.
Yeah.
If ideal clients don't have a property...
That's true.
Okay, then you can't really renovate their home.
Yeah.
If ideal clients whether they need a reno or a new home, or even do they even want it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good point. So you need to know who your ideal client is. They need to own a home, and there needs to be a need for that home to be renovated, or they have a piece of land, they need a new home built on it.
Yeah. So how do you want to do this? So because we've got a few kind of like sections in a way with possible hurdles or blind spots that we just want to quickly go through just for builders to consider.
Yeah. So I was thinking the sentence helps then introduce each of these points, which I'll go through with you. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 main headings, and then the points in between those. And the example would be one section, one heading is awareness and perception. So what are the barriers around awareness and perception? Another one will be trust and credibility. What barriers are stopping you from achieving that with the client? So the question is, again, what is making it impossible or very really hard for your ideal client to choose you as their builder? In terms of awareness and perception, the barriers there, it would be really hard if your ideal clients don't even know that you exist. It would be really hard if your marketing was reaching the wrong audience. It would be really hard if your brand message wasn't resonating with your ideal clients. If you are positioning yourself as a generalist rather than a specialist, that's a big one we see a lot before guys, I guess, come to us. Then there's also your past work portfolio is not showcasing projects in a way that appeals to your ideal clients. So you want to be winning this kind of project, $1 million projects, but you're showcasing decks and pergolas that you're doing 10 years ago, as an example.
This is like a harsh truth kind of episode, eh?
Yeah. I think
it's good because it's just there to get builders to think in terms of this whole inversion thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few more on this one. Do you want to?
Yeah. So then what about it would be really hard if your online presence looked unprofessional or outdated. It would be really hard for your ideal clients to choose you if you just blended in with other builders. Then they can't differentiate you from someone else. So then they're going to just go elsewhere until someone stands out. And then final for this section would be if you're not visible where your ideal clients are looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, I'll go into a few more. Into the next section is around trust and credibility. Okay, barriers. So again, what will make it really hard for ideal clients to hire you if you have a lack of social proof, so reviews, testimonials, case studies from previous kind of builds. If your past clients aren't giving you referrals, if you don't have a strong relationship with architects or designers, if you've had public reputation issues, if you can't articulate your process clearly, if you don't have professional certifications, credentials, all those kind of things, if you don't have a license,
Yep.
Like if you're a builder and you're meant to have a license, ideal clients can't really choose you if you don't have a license.
Yeah, or if you're insurance cap.
Yes.
That's a big one for a lot of guys. We've helped. They reach their insurance cap pretty quick, and then
they've got to solve that. And then, if your team appears disorganized or unprofessional, if you can't demonstrate long-term stability.
Yep. Very, very important. And with these points, you can go back and listen to it again on repeat, or look at the transcript, and then you can flick these if points to questions. So the first one in this section you mentioned was if you have a lack of social proof, reviews, testimonials, case studies. So you can ask yourself the question, do I have adequate reviews, testimonials, and case studies that is relevant for my ideal client right now?
Yeah, so let's have a look at this just real quick as an example.
How many reviews do you have?
Well, the cool thing is we've just listed a lot of bullet points.
Yeah.
And this might be a little bit like, might get some builders down because they're like, oh, how many things do I have to fix in order to make it easier for my ideal clients to hire me? Now, the first thing I want to tell you is even if you just do one of these things better, you have a better chance.
Yeah.
And the more you do, the better. But I believe in leverage and hitting 10 birds with one stone, not just two.
Yeah.
You could use some of these things to overcome more points. So on top of my head, let's say if you lack social proof, reviews, testimonials, case studies, let's say, for example, you do a case study. Okay, what possible points is it going to fix here? Let's quickly have a look at the list here. All right, let's say you do a case study. That'll help with public reputation issues. If you can't articulate your process clearly, if you design this case study in a way for the case study to articulate the process they went through from a client's point of view and how great it is, there you've just achieved another one. If your team appears disorganized or unprofessional, well, in the case study story, for example, you can do the opposite. And if you can't demonstrate long-term stability, right? Again, you can use this case study to demonstrate long-term stability by showing that hey, people are actually happy with what I've done with them.
Yeah.
So that's a cool thing. You can, that's just one example on top of my head. But
yeah. And don't get overwhelmed thinking this is too much. I can't do it all right now. No one can change this all in one day. You might have a few of these in place already. Some will require the smallest of tweaks. Some you'll do over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to go into the client side barriers?
Yeah. So in terms of the client side of things, what are barriers there? So if your ideal clients don't recognize that they even have a problem, it would be hard if they're unaware of potential solutions. If they don't own property or have authority to renovate, so like above. If they lack the financial means, so do they even have the money or access to funds? If they have unrealistic expectations about costs.
That's a huge one right now.
That's a big one. But in saying that, one thing that keeps coming up is on that one is how often I've heard of guys putting a opportunity aside because expectations budget isn't aligned. And you think, man, how far did you pursue that?
Yeah,
because
how much did you educate them?
Yeah.
Did you break it up into phases? Did you value manage it?
Yeah, because every time I have that discussion and I would question that builder and say, have you ever had a project come to you with a budget of X and it's gone up? What's the biggest one that's done that? What's the smallest? It's okay, it's actually there's potential there for it to go up. Yeah, but if you've provided no value and you haven't sold the solution to them, they're still stuck with where they've been informed and educated on where things should be or where they think they should be.
Yeah, and maybe they looked into this whole process 4 years ago in 2020.
Yeah.
And prices were completely different then and their expectations are wrong.
Yeah.
And that means it's not just you not getting the project, but it means they are not getting what they want. So they need to educate it.
I mean, I spoke to a guy the other day who went and looked at a project that was supposed to be 25K and it turned into 1.2 mil project.
What?
Yeah. Crazy. So that it's there.
So the clients thought one at 1.2
client,
mil worth, but they thought it's going to be 25K.
Yeah,
Is that
I've got
what
this
it is?
person coming on the podcast.
All right.
To share a bit more about the story. But yeah,
cool.
The project was coming in for something small. And then as they started chatting, it was like, oh yeah, I would like to do this. And oh yeah, I do see value. Actually, you know what? That is something we should be doing now rather than down the track. And you never know what's going to be. If you're not even willing to entertain that conversation, then it's impossible.
Cool.
You know, if they prioritize other investments and other ways of spending money, you know, the big thing we help guys understand is you're not competing just against other builders.
Yeah.
You're competing against them spending that money on anything else.
Holidays, investment
properties, shares,
watches, bikes.
Yeah. And then we've got decision paralysis.
Oh, big one.
So analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
If that's a big issue, clients sit there and go, oh, I just don't know. This is a big investment. I'm scared I'm going to make a bad investment. So I just can't make a decision.
Yeah.
And if you're not helping them make that decision, there's a big barrier there that you're not breaking down, which makes it very hard or impossible for them to choose you.
Yeah.
If they're afraid of renovating horror stories, so there's been a lot of stories out there lately of the worst scenario where builder just drops out. So you need to validate that that's not going to happen with you. Educate them on how and why. And systems and processes are very important. Case studies, again, a lot of these are interwoven. So
look, I think the thing is with all of this podcast is about inversion, and we're giving an example of having a goal and then inverting all the problems. Yeah. But this could be a podcast by itself, just going into all this detail in terms of ideal client.
Yeah.
This one's huge. Should we quickly go on? There's 3 more sections.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to miss out. So one is like operational barriers. So if you don't have the capacity when they need you, that's a huge one. I know we can talk all day about that.
Totally.
If your service doesn't match their location, simple. Like these things are simple. If your minimum project size is too high or too low, right? This could be insurance thing as well. If your timeline doesn't align with their needs, big one. The last one in this section is if you don't have systems processes suited for these type of clientele. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. And the next one, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah. So if we're looking at communication barriers, that's a big one. Yeah. I think anyone would agree that when it comes to business, especially because business is not B2B or B2C, it's P2P. It's people selling to people. Maybe Amazon, Alibaba, and that are exceptions. But in terms of communication barriers, if you can't articulate your unique value proposition, then the person can't value you, making it very hard for them to choose you because they're feeling like, well, it doesn't make sense for me to choose you. I'm not willing to part with this because I don't feel like I'm going to get more value than what this is worth to me right now, this being money in my hand. What about if you don't speak their language? So a lot of builders, because they do things every day, it's technical jargon. If we go on, we got, are you too slow to respond to inquiries? That's a big one we push guys on. If your proposal process is confusing, if you can't clearly explain your pricing, if you struggle to set proper expectations, if you can't effectively handle objections, and if you don't have a clear follow-up process. So all those to do with communication are barriers to someone choosing you.
There's probably more. The list goes on. I mean, we just quickly brainstormed this together.
Yeah.
I'll do the last one.
Go for it.
Competitive barriers. So if competitors have stronger relationships with referral sources, competitors have better financing options, like being able to help them. Is this one?
This is someone. When I talk to builders about understanding growing your network, you want to effectively become a hub that people come to you because you know a guy, and that there's so many ways in which that can. Yeah.
That could be like referring to a mortgage broker or
totally. And in this scenario, I would say that is if someone's struggling to have finance, do you have someone up your sleeve that you can refer to them that is very good at what they do, being financial brokerage, to help meet that gap?
Yeah. If competitors have more compelling guarantees, if competitors have more impressive portfolios, if competitors have stronger brand recognition, better digital presence, offer something unique that you don't, And then probably the last one, which is an important one, is if competitors are better at marketing and sales. Yeah. So that's just a few examples. Again, I think that the reason why I wanted to throw these examples out there is for builders and listeners to think about, I've got my goal. How do I normally go forwards to achieve that goal, to like plan for it? Let's just look at it in a different light. Let's invert it. What would need to be true for me not to achieve this goal? And then go break it down, list it out. Sometimes you're not going to fix those things. Like, i.e., if you don't have the portfolio of projects to show, like, what are you going to do there?
But there are workarounds for that. But it just means that you need to focus on maybe other things in this list that will then aid that project. Like I was talking to some guys this morning who are trying to win bigger projects with architects, and they were just upfront honest with these architects that we spoke to and said, we haven't done projects of this scale. This is the project we've got running the board with, just one project. And they were surprised how many architects said, you know what, we'll give you a go. Here's a project for you to work on, or, to quote and to work with us on. But just, again, going back to just P2P, again, if the architect says...
What's P2P?
P2P, person to person.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, you're a builder, you're a person, the architect is a person. If they're not going to be, I guess, nice about it and go, no, go away, you have no experience, you probably don't want to work with them. But yeah, talking to these guys this morning, actually, they shared they were surprised that there were guys out there who were willing to say, you know what, I like the way you're going about doing things. I like how you've approached us, how you're communicating. I like that you're straight up, and here's an opportunity.
Cool. So let's put this into practice. So if you're a builder listening to this right now, you're driving, don't pull out your pen and paper. Do it when you stop. But yeah, let's put it in practice. Yeah. So number one is identify like the goal, right? And go, what would make it impossible for me to achieve said goal? Okay. So whatever that goal is, what would make it impossible for me to work? What would make it impossible for clients to work with me? Yeah. Right. That's like an example question. All right. Number two, once you've listed out all those impossibilities, is that a word? Something like that.
Obstacles.
Yeah. Number two is, which one of these factors are under your control? All right.
Yes. That is
yeah.
Oh, I feel like we could talk all day about this stuff. So I don't want to go too far off track, but yeah, understanding what is in your control and what is outside your control.
And then maybe ask yourself the question, is that really out of my control?
Yeah, that's where I was going to go.
That's probably where you're going to go. I can read your mind. And then number three is, what simple changes could remove these barriers? I have no doubt, like we've seen this in our business so many times, that sometimes it's actually a really easy fix. You just fix this, or you put this safeguard in place, then you know that's not going to happen. So for me, for example, for my 500K ride, nutrition, all right, one thing that could stop me is if I bonk, right? If I don't feel right. Okay, so what do I need to do? I need to set a timer on my watch for every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes and make sure I take X amount of sugar in the form of a gel, a couple of snakes.
Some Coke, some flat Coke.
Coke, yeah. Then I know if I do that thing the whole time, my chances of completely hitting the wall goes out the window, which then makes my, chances of finishing this 500K a little bit easier. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the other thing as well that often gets overlooked or not even considered is when you come here, what simple changes could remove these barriers? Your mental state. I think that's the one that does get overlooked. No, we can't do this. And I'm just willing to stop and accept that is the truth when it's not.
So mindset.
Like for a lot of guys,
where you're getting your content from.
Charging for quotes or putting a fee there for that initial consultation. Those are two big things that a lot of guys don't do because they mentally think, no, you can't do that. And then you have the guys that they do it and they go, man, why have I not been doing this for the last 10 years?
Yeah.
Or charging more margin, putting more margins on a job. That's often just a mental barrier that they've put on them. That's a mental barrier they've just put on themselves. And I think that's just an important part
Yeah,
to
so
understand that.
mindset is a huge thing. I'd love to create a podcast on another topic, around this on another day in terms of, and this is planting the seed for all the listeners. I think this is a huge one, is like, what are all the things you believe is true that you could actually question? And, if you do look at it as a different approach, you could actually stand out quite a bit. Just because people have said this is the way you should do something, this is the way you've been brought up, doesn't necessarily mean that's true. And that could be something that stops you. So it's probably this same thing, inversion as well.
Yeah, and just because things have always been done a certain way, invert that. Well, okay, what if I did change it? How would things look?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for the episode.
That was good. Thank you.
Hope you guys like it.